In a stark reminder that welcoming friends can sometimes invite foes, the Harvey family faced a nightmarish New Year's Day in 2006. Instead of celebrating, close friends and relatives organized mass funerals, mourning lives cruelly snatched away. But the horrors did not end there. Today, we delve into a chilling series of crimes that unfolded during the New Year's week of 2006, where two families were tragically robbed of their lives. In Virginia, these heinous acts were unprecedented, leaving a community reeling. 8 lives were extinguished, and the perpetrators left a path of devastation in their wake. What began as a sequence of robbery and brutal attacks culminated in merciless slaughter. The Harvey family was a well-known presence in Richmond. 39-year-old Catherine Harvey, affectionately known as Katie, had roots in King's Grant. A vibrant figure during her school days, Katie held the title of prom queen. An artistic soul, she found beauty in every detail. It was at a cafe where she worked as a waitress that destiny introduced her to Brian Harvey, the man she would marry. Brian, raised amidst the rhythms of rock and roll, lived and breathed music. He aspired to achieve success as a performer and guitarist. Alongside friends, he formed a band called House of Freaks, where his creative spirit harmonized perfectly with Katie's artistic sensibilities. Their connection sparked instantly, blossoming into a passionate romance. By 1990, the couple exchanged vows, embarking on a new life together. They settled into a charming 2-story brick house nestled in the idyllic Woodland Heights neighborhood of Richmond. Renowned for its safety, Woodland Heights was deemed an ideal setting for raising children, with a variety of schools nearby. The Harveys believed they had found their dream home, yet it lacked one crucial element: children. In 1996, their prayers were answered with the arrival of a daughter, Stella. 5 years later, another joy entered their lives: Ruby. Stella and Ruby became the radiant center of the Harvey family's universe. Brian reflected in an interview that while his musical pursuits continued, the arrival of his daughters illuminated his true purpose on Earth. The family of 4 thrived in their cozy abode. As the family patriarch, Brian worked in the local school district, overseeing computer maintenance. On weekends, he carved out time for band rehearsals, while Katie fulfilled her dream of opening a toy store. She envisioned a place where parents could create joyful memories with their children. Life seemed idyllic. Stella attended elementary school, while Ruby had just begun her kindergarten journey. They cherished every moment spent together, embodying an active and sociable family spirit. The Harveys maintained an open-door policy in their home, their front door rarely locked, inviting neighbors and friends to come and go freely. Their home was a sanctuary for those they loved, a place where anyone could seek companionship, advice, or simply a shared meal. On January 1st, 2006, the stage was set for a festive New Year's gathering with friends and family. The Harveys planned to celebrate with their signature chili. Johnny Hott, a fellow member of House of Freaks, along with his daughter, arrived early to lend a hand with the preparations. As they reached the Harvey residence around 1:30 p.m., a nightmare began to unfurl in Richmond. Smoke billowed ominously from the windows, and the absence of the 4 family members sparked immediate concern. Worried they might be trapped inside, Johnny Hott swiftly dialed 911. Setting in motion a tragic sequence of events that would haunt the community in the days to follow. The Harveys had plans for a festive New Year's celebration, gathering with friends and family to enjoy a bowl of their famous chili. Johnny Hott, the second member of the House of Freaks band, along with his daughter, were set to arrive early at the Harvey home to assist with the preparations. They arrived around 1:30 p.m., blissfully unaware that from that very moment, a nightmare was about to engulf Richmond, one that would extend its dark shadow throughout the following week. As Johnny and his daughter approached the Harvey residence, they were greeted by a disturbing sight. Smoke billowed ominously from the windows. An unsettling realization gripped Johnny. None of the 4 family members were visible. Panic coursed through him as he feared they might be trapped inside, unable to escape the impending danger. Without hesitation, he called 911, desperately seeking help. As first responders rushed to the scene, their urgent pleas echoed in the air. They managed to contain the growing flames, directing their efforts toward the house's basement, where the fire likely ignited. Expecting to encounter a routine incident involving electrical issues or simple fire hazards, the firefighters were unprepared for the nightmare that awaited them. What they discovered instead was a horrific crime scene that would haunt them forever. 39-year-old Katie, 49-year-old Brian, 9-year-old Stella, and 4-year-old Ruby were found in the charred basement, lifeless and bound with electrical cords and tape. Nearby lay 2 hammers and a knife, tools of a devastating attack on the family. An overturned easel, soaked with spilled wine, suggested that a chaotic struggle had taken place. Empty bottles littered the floor, hinting at a grim celebration turned deadly. It became clear that someone had brutally taken the lives of the Harvey family, attempting to incinerate the evidence by setting the house ablaze. Neighbors, emergency responders, and friends stood in disbelief outside the home, grappling with the horror of what had transpired. How could such a tragedy occur during the New Year's holiday? A time meant for joy, gifts, and cherished moments had become a scene of unimaginable violence. The Harvey family, beloved by all, had been mercilessly struck down. Who could commit such an atrocity against innocent children like Stella and Ruby? The sheer brutality of the crime left firefighters and police officers in shock, their faces pale and eyes wide as they emerged from the house. It took several moments for them to regain their composure, grappling with the devastating reality of the scene they had witnessed. Complicating the investigation was the complete absence of forced entry. All doors and windows remained intact, indicating that this crime was committed by someone the family knew and trusted, or perhaps someone who exploited the community's well-known open-door policy. Either scenario was equally terrifying. The fire had obliterated many potential clues, while the water used to extinguish the flames washed away any remaining evidence that could have aided in solving the case. Detectives embarked on their investigation with minimal evidence and information. They meticulously searched the areas of the house where water and fire had not wreaked havoc, hoping to uncover a motive or leads. As they scoured the home, they noted several items missing, including the couple's wedding rings, reigniting the question, was this a robbery gone wrong, or was there something more personal at play? While police leaned towards the robbery theory, they struggled to comprehend how an ordinary crime could escalate into the slaughter of an entire family, including young Stella and Ruby. The following day, autopsies were performed on all members of the Harvey family. Even the seasoned pathologist, who had witnessed countless horrors in his career, found himself shaken by the brutality of the case. All 4 victims had been subjected to relentless violence. They bore multiple wounds, and their throats had been viciously cut. Brian and Katie succumbed to blunt force trauma, while Stella's life was extinguished by smoke inhalation and head injuries. Little Ruby suffered knife wounds to her back, one of which punctured a lung. This was not merely a murder, it was a calculated act of cruelty. It was evident that before their tragic end, all 4 members of the family endured unimaginable suffering. Authorities began their meticulous questioning of neighbors, relatives, and friends of the Harveys. Each person unanimously attested to Brian and Katie's lack of enemies, insisting that no one wished them harm. Life in the Harvey household was described as ordinary. There were no arguments or unusual sounds from within the home that night. Everything appeared to be as it should. Yet, a witness recalled seeing Katie and 9-year-old Stella just moments before the horror unfolded. In the aftermath, relatives and friends of the deceased family were left in shock. They all insisted unanimously that Brian and Katie had no enemies, nor anyone who would wish them harm. Nothing unusual had occurred within the home. There were no shouts or arguments, and no strange sounds echoed from the windows. Everything appeared normal. A witness even reported seeing Katie with her 9-year-old daughter, Stella, just before the tragedy struck. Just hours before the devastating fire, the Harvey family's world was still intact. Their older daughter, Stella, had stayed overnight at a friend's house. On New Year's morning, around 10:30, the friend's mother, Kirsten Perkinson, walked Stella home. Kirsten, a close friend of the Harvey family, approached the door and knocked, expecting one of the homeowners to greet her and take Stella inside. As Kirsten waited, she noticed Katie, Stella's mother, appeared nervous and unusually pale, as if she were hiding something. During their brief exchange, Katie mentioned she wasn't feeling well. Then, in a troubling gesture, she mimicked putting a gun to her head and firing. Kirsten, at that moment, interpreted the action as a sign of a severe headache, unaware of the true nature of Katie's distress. Sympathetic, Kirsten simply nodded, while Stella rushed into the house, darting toward the basement where one of the rooms was located. Her friend quickly followed. Kirsten had always found the Harvey home to be welcoming, its doors usually wide open. Yet, today was different. Katie abruptly caught Stella by the hand, almost pulling her out the door. Katie explained her erratic behavior by saying she wasn't feeling well and wanted to rest. Though it struck Kirsten as odd, she brushed it off, thinking it was just a fleeting moment. With plans to attend the Harvey's party later, Kirsten smiled warmly, waved goodbye, and tried to forget the unsettling scene unfolding before her. But as the day progressed, doubt gnawed at her. Kirsten couldn't shake the feeling that she might have missed a sign, a chance to intervene and save the Harveys from the impending tragedy. Authorities, piecing together the events, concluded that the perpetrator was likely already inside the Harvey home by the time Stella returned from her sleepover. They began their investigation by looking into those connected to the family. Johnny Hott, a close friend and bandmate of Brian, was the only person who raised suspicion. He had been the one to report the fire to emergency services, which made him a point of interest for investigators. Johnny and Brian were not just friends. They were founding members of the band House of Freaks. Their creative differences had led to a rift, but they shared a bond that ran deep. As the detectives delved into the world of House of Freaks, they hoped to uncover something that linked Johnny to the crime. However, what they discovered was unsettling. The music of House of Freaks was dark, steeped in themes that evoked a sense of dread. Johnny had penned most of the lyrics, which explored issues of jealousy, troubled relationships, and eerily, even basements, elements that unnervingly aligned with the crime. The detectives decided to interrogate Johnny, hoping to unravel the mystery. Yet the conversation shattered their initial theories. Johnny Hott was not involved in the tragedy. The detectives realized they had overreached in their pursuit of clues hidden within the music, forcing them to return to their suspect list, which had grown alarmingly thin after speaking with those close to the Harveys. Despite their relentless probing, investigators found themselves with no solid leads. The Harveys had no known enemies, no hidden affairs, and no disputes with neighbors, nothing that could explain such a horrific act. Among those who knew the family, no one wished them harm. As the investigation stagnated, the police began to consider the chilling possibility that the perpetrator might have been a stranger to the family. While authorities sought answers, the Richmond community, along with family and friends, mourned the profound, irreplaceable loss of the Harvey family, their lives forever altered by unthinkable tragedy. The overwhelming grief echoed throughout the town as the haunting question lingered: who could commit such a heinous crime against innocent lives? As authorities continued their relentless search for answers, the community of Richmond, alongside family and friends, mourned an immense and irreplaceable loss. The Harveys were not just a family. They were a cornerstone of their community, leaving an indelible mark on all who knew them. The front of the Harvey house was transformed into a makeshift memorial, overflowing with photos of the deceased, stuffed animals, flowers, and heartfelt tributes. Nearby, the small, charming toy store that had been Katie's lifelong dream was shrouded in grief. The residents of Richmond were left bewildered and fearful, anxious that the perpetrator of this heinous act might strike again. Unfortunately, their worst fears were confirmed in the days that followed. On January 6, 2006, while the police continued to unravel the tragic deaths of the Harvey family, a call came in from Lillian Pauley, a resident of Chesterfield, Virginia. Lillian was visibly agitated, claiming she might have vital information regarding the slaying of the Harvey family members. She recounted to the police that her daughter LaToya had a friend named Ashley Baskerville, only 21 years old. On the tragic day of January 1, 2006, Ashley had arrived at Lillian's house accompanied by two men seeking shelter. The names of the men, Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge, were etched in the back of her mind. They had found refuge in her spare room, planning to stay for the week. Shortly after their arrival, LaToya approached Lillian with her growing apprehensions. LaToya's instincts were sharp. She feared that these men might be connected to the grisly crime. The news of the Harvey family's slaying dominated every local news broadcast, casting a shadow over the town. LaToya noticed something unsettling. The men carried a laptop with them. Although possessing a laptop wasn't inherently suspicious, the circumstances surrounding it felt deeply wrong. The walls were adorned with photographs of the Harvey family, capturing moments of joy and togetherness. However, the arrival of strangers on the very day of the crime, clutching someone else's laptop, ignited immediate suspicions among the community. LaToya's fears were directed toward Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge, the two men in question. She felt a chill run down her spine, realizing that these potential cold-blooded villains were now residing under their roof, leaving the community on edge. Once the men departed from Lillian Pauley's residence, she finally felt a sense of safety and promptly contacted the authorities to report her suspicions. However, little did she know that just hours later her concerns would escalate. The station received a second urgent call, this time from LaToya herself. She was frantic, worried about her friend Ashley Baskerville. LaToya explained that when Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge left their house, Ashley had gone with them. After that fateful moment, Ashley's communication ceased entirely. LaToya's fear escalated. She feared her friend might be lying dead in her home. She struggled to articulate why the thought troubled her, but without hesitation, she provided the dispatcher with her friend's address, urging police to check on Ashley. A patrol car was dispatched to the Baskerville Tucker residence, located approximately 15 miles from the Harvey home. Ashley Baskerville lived there with her stepfather, Purcell Tucker, and her mother, Mary Baskerville Tucker. Purcell Tucker was a well-respected forklift driver, and his wife Mary worked at a local dry cleaner. The community held deep affection for this family, who radiated warmth and kindness. Purcell and Mary's bond had begun when Ashley was just a small child. Raised by Mary alone, Purcell stepped in, embracing both women as his own. Friends often spoke of Mary's infectious laughter, a bright spot in the community. While Purcell cherished music, dedicating much of his free time to playing the guitar, he was also known for his reserved nature and law-abiding lifestyle. Ashley, on the other hand, had a troubled past marked by minor offenses and substance-related incidents, yet no one could pinpoint a significant cause for concern. They were active members of their local church, embodying the ideal of a happy family, seemingly untouched by malice. Yet, the 21-year-old Ashley often clashed with her stepfather, a contrast to the quiet and contemplative man he was. The man, known for his reserved demeanor and law-abiding nature, was not a figure associated with trouble. Meanwhile, the girl had a history marked by several incidents involving prohibited substances and minor offenses. Yet, beyond this, no one could pinpoint a single reason for the tragedy that was about to unfold. Investigators were left puzzled as to why this family could become a target. When authorities arrived at the Baskerville Tucker home, they anticipated uncovering a simple misunderstanding. Instead, they were confronted with a scene of brutal violence. A harrowing crime had unfolded. The lifeless bodies of Purcell, Mary, and Ashley were discovered, bound and abandoned. Each family member had suffered horrific injuries. Purcell had been stabbed 5 times in the neck, while Mary had endured 2 deep cuts. Their throats had been savagely slit, leaving no doubt about the brutality of the attack. In a chilling display, the faces of all 3 victims were wrapped in cellophane and bound with tape. Their home was in utter disarray, ransacked for valuables. Even Purcell's Chevrolet Blazer was missing from the driveway, adding to the sense of chaos and loss. Yet, amid the horror, one detail stood out, linking the Baskerville Tuckers to another grieving family. A ring hung around Ashley Baskerville's neck, a chain that bore a striking resemblance to one of the wedding rings belonging to the Harvey family. The connection between the 2 families was tenuous, defined only by the nature of their tragic fates and that wedding ring. It became clear that the perpetrator or perpetrators could easily target another unsuspecting family, heightening the urgency for investigators. Detectives knew they had to act swiftly. They turned their focus to Latoya, eager to uncover why she was so convinced that Ashley was no longer alive. It was evident that the young woman possessed knowledge far beyond what she had shared over the phone. As Latoya recounted the events leading up to the tragedy, she revealed that on New Year's Day, Ashley had brought Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge to the house she shared with her mother, asking to rent a room for a few days. Ashley assured her friend that there would be no issues with the men. Latoya sensed that there was more to the story. Ashley had recently become acquainted with the 2 men, and it was apparent that their intentions were far from innocent. As she listened, Latoya's concern grew. It was on January 6th when Latoya, Ashley, and the 2 men sat together in the room, their conversation shifting towards plans for acquiring money. Latoya felt a chill as her friend spoke of a plot to rob her stepfather, Purcell, who had raised Ashley since childhood. Ashley had confided in Latoya about her stepfather's accumulated wealth, suggesting that Ricky and Ray could help her carry out a robbery. As they discussed the details, Latoya could hardly believe her ears, struggling to comprehend the severity of their intentions. Ashley's dissatisfaction with Purcell's strictness fueled the conversation. Latoya initially dismissed the notion as a joke, but as the hours passed, the reality of what was being planned settled heavily upon her. The plan grew darker as the group discussed staging a kidnapping, using Ashley as bait to demand a ransom from her own parents. Latoya felt a sense of dread wash over her, realizing the seriousness of the situation. Unable to bear the weight of their chilling conversation any longer, Latoya stood up and left the room, her instincts screaming that this was no longer just talk. She sat anxiously, waiting to see how this dangerous plot would unfold. Unfortunately, the outcome was far from what she had hoped. Ricky and Ray returned unexpectedly, their demeanor unsettling. Ashley was nowhere to be found, and Latoya's heart sank as she questioned them about her friend. The men claimed that Ashley had demanded too much money, implying ominously that they had parted ways with her. They did not openly confess to taking her life, but their words hinted at a sinister conclusion. Latoya's instincts screamed danger as she rushed to call the police, pleading for them to check on Ashley's safety. Earlier, she had witnessed a laptop containing photographs of the Harvey family in the possession of the men. As the pieces of this horrifying puzzle began to come together, Chesterfield police realized they had a clear direction. Witness testimonies and the wedding ring found around Ashley's neck pointed them to the key suspects, Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge, who could help unravel both cases that had intertwined in tragedy. In a chilling confession, Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge spoke of a girl who had to be discarded. They did not admit to taking her life in cold terms. Instead, they claimed they had simply gotten rid of her once the tenants vacated the room. LaToya Pauley, in a state of panic, rushed to call the police, pleading with them to check Ashley's home. Earlier, Ashley had confided in her mother about seeing a laptop containing photos of the Harvey family in the possession of the men renting a room in their house. As the investigation unfolded, Chesterfield police began to piece together the grim puzzle. Witness testimonies, along with the discovery of the Harvey wedding ring around Ashley's neck, led them to realize they were searching for a connection that would solve both cases. Detectives urged LaToya Pauley to reach out to Ray Dandridge, as she was the only thread linking them to the potential criminals. During the call, the men provided no new information. They merely reiterated their previous goodbye to Ashley Baskerville, assuring LaToya she had no need to worry about her anymore. The police, already aware of this grim reality, noted Ray's comments hinted at knowledge only law enforcement possessed. With the conversation serving as a critical lead, detectives felt a surge of confidence. They now had real suspects in their sights and used the call between LaToya and Ray to trace the two men to Philadelphia, eager to pinpoint their exact location. In a bid to capture the suspects, authorities released their photographs to the media, understanding the urgency of the situation. They needed to act swiftly to prevent any further atrocities from occurring. As detectives pursued the suspects, they stumbled upon yet another crime linked to Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge. An elderly man, Roy Mason, reached out to the police, revealing that just days prior, on January 3rd, these men had broken into his home, accompanied by a young woman who matched Ashley Baskerville's description. They had deceptively gained entry into his residence, leaving the elderly man shaken and fearful. While they threatened Roy Mason and his disabled wife, a young girl searched through their home, collecting money, electronics, and anything of material value. Roy, overwhelmed with distress, felt a deep sense of dread, knowing his wife relied on his constant care and attention. Desperation filled the air as the elderly man pleaded for his life, begging the intruders to spare him so someone would be there to care for his ailing spouse. The criminals, Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge, seemed to register his plea, leaving without inflicting further harm on the pensioners. Both Ricky Gray and Ashley Baskerville were under the influence of alcohol, a detail that added an unsettling layer to their already troubling behavior. Roy Mason and his wife counted themselves fortunate, as the criminals had limited their actions to theft. They stole cash and valuables but spared the lives of their victims. Authorities were horrified, contemplating the potential extent of the crimes these two men might have committed, having already perpetrated 3 offenses within the span of a week. Thanks to a Chevrolet stolen from Purcell Tucker, police were able to narrow down the suspect's location. The vehicle was spotted parked near a house in Philadelphia, a residence belonging to Ray Dandridge's father. On January 7, 2006, a SWAT team surrounded the house, ready to apprehend the suspects. Ray Dandridge was intercepted during the operation. As the SWAT team moved in, Ray Dandridge attempted to escape through the back door, surrendering without resistance. However, Ricky Gray had no intention of yielding easily. A thorough search of the house was necessary to finally locate him. He was discovered hiding behind a water heater in the basement, armed with a drill, which he intended to use as a weapon. Authorities described Gray as having a crazed expression, as if he would rather face death than surrender. After a brief struggle, the police were able to subdue him, leading to the apprehension of both men. Within an hour of their arrest, Ray Dandridge confessed to the murder of the Baskerville Tucker family. His admission came swiftly, revealing his participation in the attack without hesitation. Yet, he shifted the blame, claiming that Ricky Gray was the mastermind behind the horrific events, stating he merely followed orders. Both men were charged with the murders of Purcell Tucker, Mary Baskerville, and Ashley Baskerville, but detectives sensed there was more to uncover. The detectives understood the necessity of securing a confession regarding the brutal attack and murder of the Harvey family. With no physical evidence linking the suspects to the crime in Richmond, the pressure was on. Eventually, Ray Dandridge provided testimony, revealing that the Harvey family had also been present during the violent incident. Meanwhile, Ricky Gray, while confined in his cell, poured his thoughts into a 3-page letter addressed to a detective. In this chilling confession, he laid bare the wild and chaotic lives he and his accomplices had led. Despite the gravity of their crimes, they exhibited a disturbing lack of remorse and offered no clear motive for their actions. The insatiable thirst for power over defenseless individuals surged within them. Two men, bonded by their penchant for crime and the adrenaline rush it brought, were about to unleash terror. Ricky, the instigator of their dark journey, was Ray's uncle. Both men, born in 1977, shared a childhood that intertwined like brothers. Ricky's struggles were evident early on. School was a battleground for him, compounded by a diagnosis of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which often led him into trouble. The foundation of his family life was anything but stable. His father resorted to corporal punishment, while Ricky endured molestation and abuse from his stepbrother. A childhood steeped in alcohol, drugs, and violence shaped his turbulent existence. These harrowing experiences laid the groundwork for Ricky's entire life. As he matured, the chaos persisted, with no signs of reform. He faced punishment at every turn, instilling in him a chilling belief that justice would never catch up. By the age of 10, Ricky was already consuming alcohol heavily and engaging in petty crimes. Throughout this tumultuous time, Ray remained at his side, equally challenged in the realm of learning. With a low intelligence quotient, Ray struggled to adapt socially. Lacking support, he clung to Ricky, who never judged him, but instead drew him deeper into a world of questionable choices. This bond ultimately led Ray to mirror Ricky's choices, spiraling down a path of crime. The two teenagers became inseparable, committing various minor offenses together. Their friendship built on a foundation of criminality. Their criminal escapades caught up with them in 1995, when at the age of 18, they faced a 10-year prison sentence for a series of robberies in Northern Virginia. Yet, even during their separation, their connection remained unbreakable. Upon their release, scarcely adjusted to normal society, they were drawn together again, as if by an unseen force. Just months before the horrific events that would unfold in Richmond and Chesterfield, they were back in their old habits. On January 1, 2006, in the early hours, the two men plotted to obtain money. They traveled to Richmond, intent on scoping out the city for their next target. Shortly before 9 o'clock that morning, Ricky and Ray found themselves in a quiet neighborhood near the Harvey residence. A stroke of fortune struck them when they noticed the front door was unlocked. The Harvey family's open-door policy made them an ideal target. Brian and Katie, eager to help others, had unwittingly made themselves and their daughters vulnerable. Ricky and Ray seized the opportunity, bursting into the home, ordering the family into the basement where they were bound. The men assured the terrified family that compliance would ensure their safety. In a desperate attempt to survive, Brian, Katie, and little Ruby huddled quietly in the basement, awaiting the criminals' departure. Ricky stood guard over the family, a menacing figure in the dim light. Meanwhile, Ray scoured the house for valuables, the sound of their violation echoing through the once safe space. Just a couple of hours into their invasion, around 10:30, a knock at the door shattered the tense atmosphere. Kirsten Perkinson arrived, announcing her return with 9-year-old Stella from a sleepover. With that knock, the calm of the morning erupted into chaos. The criminals demanded Katie go upstairs to retrieve her daughter, threatening her with the lives of her loved ones should she attempt to alert anyone to their presence. Katie ascended from the basement, her heart pounding as she fought to maintain a composed exterior, desperately trying to shield her husband and Ruby from danger. A knife pressed against her back, a constant reminder of the peril they faced. Through her courage and quick thinking, Mrs. Harvey managed to protect Kirsten's daughter from a dire fate, instinctively grasping for any semblance of control amid the unfolding nightmare. However, as she attempted to guide Stella to safety in the basement, Ricky's fear of exposure ignited a fury within him. His eyes, once filled with rage, now transformed into a terrifying storm of desperation. In a fit of rage, Ricky unleashed a brutal attack, inflicting knife wounds on each member of the Harvey family. When the chaos subsided, he was left in a state of disbelief, horrified by the violence he had just perpetrated. Despite Stella and Ruby's survival, Ricky's inability to control his fury drove him to deliver more strikes. When the final breath escaped the Harvey family's lips, he and his accomplices set about erasing their horrific crime. They ignited Katie's easel, shattering wine bottles in the basement to escalate the flames. As they fled the scene, they vanished into the night, unnoticed by anyone. But nearby, Ashley Baskerville waited in a parked car, fully aware of the grim purpose that had drawn her companions into the house. Her knowledge of their intentions did not elicit any sympathy. She remained an indifferent observer of the unfolding horror. By January 8th, the police had gathered enough evidence to confirm that Ashley was not merely a victim, but also complicit in the series of attacks. Confessions from both Ricky and Ray painted a chilling picture of their violent spree. These two men had extinguished the lives of two entire families, but the investigation hinted that their criminal history ran deeper. The officers' suspicions were soon validated, revealing a darker narrative. Just a month before New Year's, Ricky had married Trevor Gray, but the union quickly turned deadly. Ricky Gray's violent nature surfaced, and he beat his wife so severely that she ultimately succumbed to her injuries. Her body was discovered in a shallow grave on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. Initially, the police dismissed her death as a common overdose due to her troubled history, ignoring the signs of foul play. Only her parents suspected her husband, aware of the couple's constant quarrels. The case surrounding Trevor Gray's death remained closed until Ricky's confession in 2006. While incarcerated, he had formed a bond with Trevor through letters, leading to their eventual marriage. After his release, Ricky moved into the Gray family home. Trevor's parents worried for her safety, fully aware of Ricky's criminal past. Yet, Trevor believed in a change that had yet to materialize. Convinced that prison had reformed him, she was tragically mistaken. The walls of confinement had only contained Ricky Gray's aggression temporarily, and once free, it erupted with devastating consequences. After dispersing to their relatives' homes, Ricky and Ray reunited in Virginia by December, continuing their grim pattern of violence. In a horrifying revelation, Ray later recounted how he had restrained Trevor while Ricky savagely beat her with a metal pipe. Ricky Gray attempted to reintegrate into law-abiding society, but his efforts proved largely unsuccessful. Then on October 26, 2005, his nephew, Ray Dandridge, was released from prison, marking a pivotal moment in their lives. Ray moved into the home of Trevor Gray, Ricky's wife. The combination of these two troubled individuals was a volatile mix. It took only 6 months of marriage for Trevor to see through Ricky's facade, realizing he was far from the man he had presented himself to be. Trevor's parents, devastated and fearing for their daughter's life, ejected both Ricky and Ray from their home, unaware of the horrors that had already transpired. Ricky Gray later confessed to a brutal attack on December 31, 2005, when he and Ray assaulted 26-year-old Ryan Carey in Warrington. This brutal encounter nearly proved fatal, leaving Ryan with multiple stab wounds to the chest. In a moment of clarity, Trevor had confided in her parents about her mistake in marrying Ricky and expressed a desire to dissolve the marriage. But just days later, she vanished without a trace. The assault unfolded in front of Ryan's parents' house, leaving him in a coma for 2 weeks and robbing him of the use of his right arm. The attack was motivated by a simple desire for theft, his wallet and keys. Despite the severity of the crime, the investigation stalled until Ricky Gray's confession broke the case wide open. The men had met Ashley at a bar on New Year's Eve, where they plotted to stage her kidnapping, further entrenching themselves in a web of violence and deceit. The investigation had reached a standstill, only to be broken by Ricky Gray's shocking confession. The men had met Ashley at a bar on New Year's Eve, devising a plan to stage her kidnapping, hoping to extort money from her stepfather. However, their ill-fated scheme unraveled when Gray and Dandridge forcefully entered the Tucker Baskerville home, using the keys Ashley had unwittingly given them. They bound Ashley, her mother, Mary, and her stepfather, Purcell, stuffing gags into their mouths to stifle their cries for help. As they plotted their next move, the criminals' sinister intentions shifted dramatically. In a horrific turn of events, they decided to take the lives of Ashley's parents right before her very eyes. Ricky later recounted his chilling resolve. He had grown tired of the girl and simply disposed of her, a fate her mother could never have anticipated from that fateful encounter. It became evident that both Gray and Dandridge derived a twisted pleasure from their crimes, driven not by necessity, but by a chilling desire for profit. During one fateful New Year's week, these two men sent 7 individuals to their graves, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. Their reign of terror included the robbery of 2 unsuspecting victims and the brutal beating of another, nearly to death. Yet, when authorities began their investigation into the Harvey case, they could scarcely fathom the depths of ruthlessness they were about to uncover. In a chilling turn of events, Ray Dandridge pleaded guilty, facing a life sentence behind bars on October 23, 2006. Meanwhile, Ricky Gray, despite the mounting evidence against him, withdrew his confessions, ultimately receiving a death sentence. The jury's verdict was heavily influenced by the tragic deaths of 9-year-old Stella and 4-year-old Ruby, both victims of his heinous acts. As legal battles ensued, the execution date was postponed multiple times, ultimately reaching the hallowed halls of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, steadfast in its stance, dismissed any arguments presented by the defense regarding Ricky Gray's traumatic childhood, ruling that the punishment fit the gravity of his misdeeds. On January 18, 2017, the sentence was finally executed, sealing his fate. Ricky Gray's execution marked him as one of the last individuals to face the death penalty in Virginia before capital punishment was abolished in 2021. In a poignant recognition of their loss, the Harvey family was posthumously honored as Richmond's Family of the Year in 2006,